right. Good news. You don't have to deal with another weekend without college football. It is week 0. You get a couple of games to watch this weekend to kind of whet your appetite for next Thursday when Utah plays BYU. Joining us now to break it down, a good buddy. I haven't chatted with him for a minute, but he is John Madsen, who joins the drive here on ESPN 700. Johnny, how are you, man?
My man, thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. Always good to hear your voice. So, you were with Urban, right, when he was up speaking at the University of Utah? Kind of take us behind the scenes. What was that like?
Yeah, man. It's I haven't talked to Urban for quite some time. Actually, he and I speak probably once or twice a year. And he took one of my guys years back, Brandon Bowen, who's now a senior. And so I was talking to him through that process, obviously. But he gave me a call 2 days ago and said, John, I'm going to be in town on Wednesday. I'd love to see you. I'm going to go up and speak to Gary Anderson's team at Utah State, and then I'm going to come see the University of Utah. I'd love for you to go with me. So can you make it? And so it was one of those things. I didn't know when he was going to call on Wednesday. I kind of cleared the whole schedule and just waited for his phone call. But we got together about 2 o'clock, went through the facility. He hadn't seen the new University of Utah facility, obviously, since he left. And so we were walking through the buildings. Really, really cool, man. He really seemed to take it all in. He walked through the field house, stared up at that Fiesta Bowl banner for a while, and just kind of reminisced about some of the great times he had coaching and was asking about players. And I really got to hang out with him from about 2 o'clock in the afternoon till about 10 o'clock at night. So really, really cool, man. He's a living legend as far as coaching is concerned, and one of the guys who's had tremendous impact, not only in my football life, but I mean, life after football.
John, he absolutely, I should say, is a legend, and not just around here, but he's one of the greatest, coaches in the history of college football, not just the U or not just Florida or Ohio State. He's on the short list of great coaches. What makes him tick in your mind? Because you're one of his guys, and there are not many people that are Urban's guys. You're one of them. So what makes him tick?
Yeah, man. Like, it was really cool because Kyle, I was in the coach's office with Kyle and Urban and one other of our guys, Bo Nagahe. We just chatted for a while, but then Kyle asked Urban if he would speak to the team at the end of practice. Urban said sure. So practice ends. Kyle introduces myself, Bo Nagahe, and then asks Urban to speak to the team for a second. Urban immediately goes right back to the Urban that I remembered when I was playing. He got in front of the team. These kids are young. Obviously they know who Urban Meyer is, but they don't, they've never been coached by him. It's the end of practice. It's hot as hell outside. And Urban just goes off for 10 minutes. And what Urban does differently than any coach I've ever been around, and I played football for a lot of years, is he literally speaks belief and possibility into the players' minds. He was going through all the bowl games that Utah's been to, and he started telling the players, look, you guys are practicing right now. USC's practicing right now. Washington's practicing right now. You guys are all practicing hard. Talent is not going to separate any one of you teams that are going to, fight for the Rose Bowl championship. The thing that's going to separate you is whether or not you guys believe collectively that you can win the Rose Bowl. I'm telling you right now, you have the talent, you have the ability, you have the coaching staff, but it all comes down to belief. And he spoke for 10 minutes. You could see coaches, just every single person that was around there, eyes were just glued on Urban. I was literally ready to put a football helmet on. I haven't done so in 10 years, and run through a brick wall again. And I was thinking of it in terms of like my business and just doing things that other people aren't willing to do. But Urban's been like that from the time I've ever met him. From the very first team meeting we had in 2003, people forget we were picked to take 7th in the Mountain West Conference going into that 2003 year. So if we were ranked in the top, we might have been ranked in the top 100. Definitely not top 25. The very first barbecue that we had as a team, I was a part of. We were in Urban's backyard. We had just gotten Crown Burger catered.
Fantastic.
And he starts. It is fantastic food. He starts speaking about how we were going to be a top 5 program, and that how he knows he's been around programs, and he knows that the talent is there, and it's only a matter of time before Utah football is top 5. And we're looking at this guy like he's crazy. I grew up here in Salt Lake City. I know Utah had some teams that cracked the top 25, and they had some pretty good years, but we thought we knew what Utah football was about. And in that first moment, we were thinking that this guy has lost his mind. But every single time he spoke to us, he spoke about that belief, and we started believing him. And in the end, in 2004, when we won the Fiesta Bowl, he had us he had every single person in that room that believed that we could be any single team that they put in front of us. And in a single moment the other day, you could see the Utah football players like getting that belief. And so for Urban, I always tell people it's not really a matter of X's and O's. Yes, I think he's a genius at that too. But his real genius lies in getting every single person in the organization to believe that they can be champions.
Yeah, that's a skill. I mean, that is certainly a skill, not just for coaching, but for life. And I want to talk about what you're doing now, John, because I think it's fascinating, and I know you're really good at it in just a minute. But kind of a question attendant to what you just said. We all know Kyle Whittingham is his own man and his own coach, but how much of Urban do you think rubbed off on Kyle, and how much do you think Kyle utilizes his time that he spent with Urban Meyer?
Oh, I think a lot. I mean, they have – just being around those two, they have tremendous respect for one another. They're both really, really great at what they do. And so I know that Kyle's taken a lot from Urban, and I know that Urban has a ton of respect for Kyle. And, it was really fun to be a player when both of those guys were there, because Urban's more of an offensive guy. Kyle obviously had the defense on lock. And our practices back then were so intense because we were trying to beat our own team. Urban was trying to beat Kyle. Kyle was trying to beat Urban. And so our practices were so intense for 2 years straight that it made everyone better. But I know that they have tremendous respect for one another, and, they're friends. So they both had an impact on each other.
So let me get your thoughts on 6 days from now, John. I mean, everybody knows the score. It's 8 straight for Utah. It's a generation of Utah dominance. I really like Kalani Sitake. I think he's going to have those kids ready to play. I know BYU fans really love that young quarterback. I think, there's still a large talent gap from what I see. I'm anticipating a Utah win. I don't think it's going to be that problematic, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the rivalry in my eyes is still special. I think that the talent gap has widened over the years. Utah, they just have a bigger recruiting pool, but it's a dangerous game for Utah too, because I remember what it felt like when we were in the Mountain West and we were playing Pac-12 teams under Urban. I think we were, over Urban's career, we were 5-0 against Pac-12 teams when we were in the Mountain West, but the feeling was that we were the underdog, and we came out swinging from the gate. And that's a dangerous team to play. And I think that BYU, especially coming in at home, first game of the year, both teams are going to have stuff happen in the first game that, they'll improve upon later in the season. But the first game of the year with the rivalry and BYU having that feeling of the underdog, I think it's a dangerous game it's definitely a dangerous game for Utah. It's definitely BYU has the ability to beat them. I'm with you in the fact that I don't think that BYU has the talent and depth that Utah has, for sure. But it's a dangerous game. I think Utah wins, but I thought Utah would win by a way bigger margin last year, and we barely came out of that one. So you never know, man. I'm definitely taking Utah. I have full faith in them, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that BYU can win the game, and if they play a phenomenal game and Utah comes out sleepwalking like they don't think the game's important, they'll lose.
Yeah, got to keep your head on a swivel, no doubt about that.